Okay, well, I will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to tonight's event. Thank you all for joining the U.S. Heartland China Association Student Forum. Tonight, we are very excited to be discussing Michael Sandel's book, The Tyranny of Merit, and how that relates to our audience and international students. So I am going to turn it over to our moderator here in a moment to introduce our panels and our speakers. But before I do, I just want to, if this is your first event with the U.S. Heartland China Association, welcome. So glad to have you. If you're not familiar with us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that services the Heartland and our relationship with China. Here we believe that not all bridges are built of steel. Equally important, bridges are built on friendship, cultural communion, and commercial cooperation. Where these bridges exist, we believe that communities flourish. A few things, a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions that you would like to address for our moderator to address at the end of the meeting, please feel free to leverage the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And then we do have a brief survey at the end of the event if you have 2 minutes to fill out. It's to just let us know how we did and if you'd like to be more involved with us. So now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Junlong Wang, who is a student at USC. He also just so happens to be an intern with the U.S. Heartland China Association, as well as Learning Life. So Junlong, I'm going to turn it over to you if you would like to introduce the rest of our speakers tonight. And Junlong, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Jason, for the introduction. And yeah, today we have a huge honor to have all of those amazing student panelists and Dr. Michael Sandel to join us today. Yeah, so as Jason said, my name is Jun Long, and I'm a student at USC majoring in international relations. And also I'm the founder of the Bridge Cultural Exchange Academy. This is the first student organization conducting public diplomacy on USC campus. Yeah, so today in this panels, we do have 3 students joining us. And then the first one is, I would like to introduce Jiayuan Tian. He's a student at Manova University, and also in addition, he is the Chinese director for Global Citizen Year. Also, he's a part of 2023 AACYF Top 30 Under 30, as well as an alumnus of the Peking University Guanghua School of Management. And then next, we have Kali Lu. Kali Lu, she is currently pursuing her bachelor degrees in business administration at the University of Southern California, Marshall School of Business. She is also the co-founder of the Bridge Cultural Exchange Academy at USC. Then lastly but not least, we have Yiliu Cao. She is a student at Northwestern University, pursuing her degree in Doctor of Physical Therapy and Master of Public Health. She previously graduated from the University of Michigan and Ann Arbor with a degree in movement science. So yeah, then I would like to introduce our faculty speaker, Dr. Michael Sandel. It's really our privilege and honor to have him on this panel today. Dr. Michael Sandel teaches political philosophy at Harvard University. His book on justice, democracy, ethics, and markets have been translated into more than 30 languages. He has been described as the world's most influential living philosopher. Sandel's latest book, The Tyranny of Merit, What's Become of the Common Good, was named Best Book of the Year by Guardians, Bloomberg, New Statesman, the Times Literary Supplements, and New Weeklies. Michael Sandel was named by Chinese Newsweek the most influential foreign figure in China and is respected figure among international students. So on a personal note, so I have been reading Professor Michael Sandel's book since 2021, right after I got admitted to USC. So that book, I first read his book on justice. So it's really interesting book. And then I just discovered this book, The Tyranny of Merit. it put me in a position to question lots of my previous belief, and then it just opens my door to philosophy.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Shunlong, and thanks to the members of this panel for joining in this discussion. And it really will be a discussion of my book, The Tyranny of Merit. Can we find the common good? Shunlong has asked me to just begin our conversation by giving a brief overview of the themes of the book. To speak of merit or meritocracy as a kind of tyranny, that's a paradox on the face of it. Normally, we think of merit as a good thing. If I need surgery, I want a well-qualified surgeon to perform it. That's merit, being well-qualified for the role. If I'm flying in an airplane, I want a well-qualified pilot at the controls. That's merit. So how could merit, allocating jobs and social roles and opportunities on the basis of qualifications, how could merit become a kind of tyranny? Well, here's how. To see how this can happen, let's look back over the last 4 or 5 decades. The divide between winners and losers has been deepening. In many of our societies, this divide has been poisoning our politics and setting us apart. This has partly to do with widening inequalities in recent decades, inequalities of income and wealth. But it's not only that, it has also to do with changing attitudes towards success that have accompanied the widening inequalities. Those who've landed on top have come to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit, and that they therefore deserve the full bounty that the market bestows upon them. And by implication, that those who struggle, those who've been left behind, they must deserve their fate too. This way of thinking about success arises from a seemingly attractive ideal, the principle of meritocracy, the principle that says, insofar as chances are equal, the winners deserve their winnings. Now, we know that in practice, chances are not equal in our societies. Everyone does not begin the race at the same starting point. Take an example from higher education. In many top universities in the United States, despite generous financial aid policies, there are more students from families in the top 1% than there are students from families in the entire bottom half of the country combined. So we don't fully live up to the meritocratic principles we profess. But that's not the only problem. The deeper problem is that meritocracy has a dark side, and the dark side is that it is corrosive of the common good. It leads to hubris among the winners and to humiliation for those who lose out. It encourages the successful to inhale too deeply of their own success, to forget the luck and good fortune that helped them on their way, to forget their indebtedness to those who make their achievements possible. And it leads them too often to look down on those less fortunate than themselves. One of the most potent sources, it seems to me, of the populist backlash against elites that we've seen is the sense among many working people that elites look down on them. And this is a legitimate complaint. Because even as globalization brought widening inequalities, its proponents, the mainstream political parties, offered working people some bracing advice. They said, if you want to compete and win in the global economy, go to university. What you earn will depend on what you learn. You can make it if you try. What these elites missed was the insult implicit in this advice. The insult was this: if you're struggling in the new economy and you don't have a university diploma, your failure must be your fault. That's the implication. So it's no wonder that many working people turned against credentialed meritocratic elites. So I hope in our discussion, people will respond to that general diagnosis. And also, perhaps we can begin a conversation about how to reconceive the meanings of success, and especially the role of universities and higher education. Because what we've done in the meritocratic age is that we have made higher education the arbiter of opportunity. The universities that you attend, the university where I teach, these are the places that define the merit and that confer the credentials that a meritocratic, a market-driven meritocratic society honors and rewards. But the problem is, it leaves a lot of people behind. And those of us who spend our days in the company of the credential can easily forget that most of our fellow citizens do not have a four-year university degree. So it's folly, I think, to create an economy that sets as a necessary condition of dignified work and a decent life a university degree that most people don't have. Don't get me wrong, encouraging people to go to university is a good thing. Making universities more accessible to those who can't afford it, that's even better. But individual upward mobility through higher education is not in itself an adequate solution to inequality. So, and this is really just to give a suggestion about the direction I think we should explore instead. We should focus less on arming people for meritocratic competition and focus more in making life better for those who contribute to the common good through the work they do, the families they raise, and the communities they serve, whether or not they have a university degree. This means renewing the dignity of work and putting it at the center of our politics. Now, what that might look like, how we might go about it, and how we might shift the harsh attitudes towards success that underlie the deep divisions in our public life. These are questions that I hope we can explore with this distinguished panel. So, Junlon, I turn things over to you to tell us where we go next and to begin the discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Professor Sandel. And yes, as Professor Sandel mentioned today, we gather here to explore just profound questions surrounding the theme of meritocracy, the essence of success. And also, since most of us here are students, and obviously the dynamic of elite college admission, college educations. So this is not only about one academic discussion, but we hope we can help our audiences to challenge their previous belief, getting some refreshing point of views. Yeah, so to start, I would like us to dive into the question of success, then move on to elite colleges admissions, and then I will open up the floor for all of the student panelists. So yeah, so Professor Sandel, you mentioned the success in the context of meritocracy. How do you believe the societal definition of success have changed over the past decades as a result of this meritocracy, both in China and the United States, or is this only relevant in the United States?
I think the definition of success has changed in recent decades in both China and the United States. In both of our countries, the meaning of success and the measure of success consists largely of two metrics. One of them is the market. The other is the use of standardized tests to determine who wins admission to top universities. Now, let me take the second first, the role of testing, high stakes testing to determine who wins admission to the top universities. In the United States, students from their adolescent years, their high school years, and before spend enormous amounts of time and effort, and for families who can afford it, resources, preparing to do well on the SAT. In China, it would be the Gaokao, the standardized test that determines who wins admission to the top tier universities. There are cram courses in China. There are SAT prep courses in the United States. In both countries, enormous competitive pressure is placed on young people from the time they're in high school and even before to prepare themselves to do well on the SAT, on the Gaokao. And I've spoken about the unfairness for those who can't afford access to these prep courses or to the best schools that equip them to compete for admission. But the enormous pressure, and it produces really very substantial stress and anxiety on young people. And the members of this panel can say whether or not you've observed this in yourselves or in your classmates. Enormous pressure even to win admission to top universities. And this, I think, has created many sources of anxiety. We see alarming levels of mental health, anxiety and depression conditions in universities and university health services. So the tyranny of merit, as I describe it in the book, oppresses those who are excluded, but it also exerts a very heavy burden on the winners, on those who succeed. And so one question is whether the relentless meritocratic pressure and emphasis on merit defined as doing well on the SAT or on the Gaokao is something we should reconsider. I mentioned also markets defining success. And in both China and in the United States, we have, in the last 4 decades, seen a relentless emphasis on market values and market definitions of success. And we easily fall into the assumption that the money people make is the measure of their contribution to the economy and to the common good. But we need to challenge this assumption, because if we really believed it, Junlong, then we would have to believe that a hedge fund manager really contributes 1,000 or 2,000 times greater social value to the economy than a school teacher or a nurse, or for that matter, a doctor. But is that really true? Here again, I think we need to have a broader debate about how to measure the value of people's respective contributions to the common good, because this bears not only on the system of economic rewards, but also on the forms of honor, respect, and social esteem, social recognition that we accord those who make various contributions through their work.
Yes, then that's some really good points about about the shift and the impact of the definition of success. And if we just look at as you said, if we just look at the market value, just look at the degree, then we just ignoring lots of other factors such as luck, such as the talents you perceive, and then as you mentioned in your book, the talent we perceive is also an element of luck. So we are lucky to have that sort of talents. Yeah, and I think all of our, student panelists, they are students, they're really good students. They went to really good high school in China and America, and then elite universities as well. So yeah, I would like to ask you guys, has your perception of success been influenced by this education, by your educational journey, by your parents, or is there any moments that particularly stood out or challenged your belief, like during your educational journey?
Yes. Hi everyone. Hi, Professor. In my mind, my own definition of success is I'm doing what I feel satisfied. And I just realized that a lot of people's satisfaction is getting higher degrees and also win in the competition. And I feel like the reason of my own definition of success is the innovative education journey I had before. So I went to school in US, in South Korea, in Beijing, and also at home. Yeah, so that's why I do not intention to pursue a higher degree just for my studies purpose. And then I realized that is that because that I'm already a winner. So my meaning is I was admitted by a lot of colleges during my undergraduate admission process. And I also got a lot elite titles. And I also got a good grades. So does that mean only if I got those things, I can define my own success and also pursue my life goal? Because I found that a lot of elites choose to be life coach, and that is what we think are pursuing their own love during their career journey. Yeah, so that's my question to everyone and also Professor. Is defining the success only the right of the winner? Yeah.
A great question. And just if I could ask you, Xiaohuan, what you say that for you, success means pursuing what's fulfilling and satisfying in your studies and in a career. Yes. What did you find that was? What are you studying, and what career do you think you will pursue?
I would say impacting others to believe they should have the right to choose their own life choice, because my education and also life path is innovative. And I also want other people to have such courage to have their own choices. Yeah.
Thank you for that. What about Kelly and Ilio?
That's a really good question.
Do you want to go first?
I can go first. Okay, cool. Sorry. But yeah, hello everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think I definitely do have a lot of shifts in terms of my perspective of success. And before I was I think I'm probably oldest among among the student panelists, just because I'm a graduate student. But in terms of my academic journey, before I got admitted to the Michigan University, I was actually finished my 2 years of education back in California, UC Davis. And the reason why I decided to transfer, there is definitely something sort of I would love to pursue my education or finish get my education in a more higher standard university, which quote unquote, when I finally got admitted to Michigan, University of Michigan, I texted my family being like, "Oh, this is the highlight of my life." I'm just being honest, and then later on, after I just throughout the time after I finally transitioned to more healthcare based education programs, and my friends at my age graduate from their undergrad and getting to their career, the meaning of success started to change. And it could be I would love to do whatever I'm passionate about for a lifelong period of time. It could be I am I don't have to make overwhelmingly affluent amount of money, but I can make enough money that I can spend with my family and just have some quality time with people that I love, things like that. So I guess also I'm just pursuing my own degree, and I probably will pursue another PhD after my graduation. And all this sort of delayed satisfaction will be regarded as a success from my perspective and based on my personal experience.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that. And Kali?
Yes. Hi, Professor Sandel. Thank you for being here, and thank you all for the amazing answers. My name is Kali, and I guess that is also one of the questions that got a lot with my peers when we discussed it, either in student clubs or in career center, that what do I think as a success for me? Because as a business major, I really think that success can be various type. It really would be up to a personal choice. And if I trace back to my very, very young age, I would say my definition of success is just be a scientist, which I believe some of you might have before. And that goes back to one of the points that I think Dr. Sandel said before about whether the contribution of the society, define what you have, or the success that you have, or how you would be able to also contribute to society overall, I guess. So yeah, I think my definition of success right now really varies. And when I think of it, I feel like it really depends on the perception that I have, and also the education that I've received from time to time, or from my younger age to now.
Right.
And that's why I also brought up the younger stage of me thinking about just being a scientist will be enough of achieving the success. But now then I have a different perception of it, because of the shift of my cultural background, or educational background, and my surroundings and environment.
Right. Great. Thank you for that. Well, and Junlun, now I know I've been asking the questions to get to know our panelists a little bit better, but I know that you and they have prepared questions for me about the tyranny of merit. So I really want to give you an opportunity, and the four of you, to raise some of the questions that you prepared.
Yes, thank you. But please feel free to share any of your comments or thoughts following students' remarks. Yeah, it's fine. But as we said, as we heard all of our student panelists mention, education is really, really important. Education play a huge role for the definition of success. They change the definition of success when they are in college. But as Professor Sandel, you mentioned earlier, you want the elite college admission to be the arbiter of opportunity. So can you elaborate more on this?
Well, I do not want.
Oh, you do not want this. Yeah,
do not want elite universities to be the arbiters of opportunity. I think we should move away from a single-minded focus, because the percentage of students, the percentage of those in our society who are able to attend elite universities is really just a tiny fraction. And we sometimes think, part of what we've done and what worries me is that we have converted universities into sorting machines for a market-driven meritocratic society. And from one point of view, you might say, well, isn't that a good idea? Don't we want higher education to identify and train the best and the brightest, the smartest, so that they can be the ones to lead our societies? Isn't that a good thing? Well, I'm not so sure it's a good thing for a number of reasons. One has to do with inequalities of access. Because if you look at SAT scores, they track family income very, very closely. The higher the income of your family, the greater the likelihood that you will score well on the SAT. Now, meritocratic university admissions came in the first place with the promise of creating a more fair, a more equal mode of access, so that it wasn't only upper-class kids from well-off families who got into elite universities. The whole idea was, if we have a standardized test, then everyone, regardless of their background, can compete. And that's true, they can compete. Same is true with the Gaokao. But typically, those who score highest are the ones who have had economic and cultural advantages growing up. So what's happened is, instead of being a departure from an aristocratic hierarchical society, meritocracy has become a new kind of aristocracy. Affluent, well-educated parents have figured out how to pass their privileges onto their kids, not by bequeathing them vast estates as in the old feudal days, but by equipping them with the ability and the means and the resources to prepare for the meritocratic tournament that admission to higher education has become. And so that's one problem. Here's another. I mean, if we look at political representation, well, let me say one more word about access. We think of higher education as a powerful engine of upward mobility. The idea being that kids who come from low-income families can go to university and rise as adults. A team of economists did a study to find out just how powerful an engine of upward mobility higher education in the United States is. They looked at 1,800 colleges and universities. This was a team led by my colleague, the economist Raj Chetty. They looked at 1,800 selective and not selective, public and private colleges and universities. And they asked the following question: what percentage of students in these places came from a low-income background and will rise as adults to the top 20%? So bottom 20% to top 20%. And what do you think they found? What percentage rise in these universities? right? What would you guess? Or if you've read the book, you know the figure. 2%. Only 2%. Now, this isn't because going to a good university doesn't help you do well in life. But there are so few students from low-income backgrounds in elite universities to begin with, that there is very little upward mobility of this kind. Here's a way of thinking about it. Higher education is like an elevator in a building that most people enter on the top floor. So that's one of the problems with turning universities into sorting machines for market-driven meritocratic societies. Another is that because of the intense pressure and the anxiety it produces, and the focus within universities on credentializing and networking, I worry that the credentialing function of universities is beginning to crowd out the educational mission. Students are so preoccupied with competing for the next thing, with getting good grades and building yet more credentials to apply for consulting jobs or jobs in Wall Street or the like, that there is less and less time and willingness and mental peace and stability to step back and to take full advantage of especially the undergraduate years, which should be a time for exploration and reflection and figuring out what's worth caring about and what path is right for me, and figuring out what I believe and why. That's what I think the undergraduate years should be about, not striving for the next achievement and the next credential, as many young people have been striving since high school and before. So that's another thing, the kind of relentless, kind of competitive race that never seems to end and that distracts us from the intrinsic value of teaching and learning and studying and reflecting on what's worth caring about in life. So these are some of the reasons, Junlong, that I think we should try to disentangle the sorting machine role from the intrinsic purpose of the university. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. Yeah, about you do not want it. Yeah, because there's so many elements in the college admissions process, right? There might be this, except not even to mention scandals, but we all see elite family tend to pass the privileges to the children. I think all of the student panelists can testify to this. They have personal experience to college admission. But for the sake of time, I do like to open up the floor for all of my fellow student panelists. If you have any questions, just if you want to follow up on this, or if you have any question to ask to Professor Sandel. Colin.
Thank you, Dr. Sandel. So I do have a question, like a few questions prepared for this, and a few of them are under the chapter of meritocracy reconsidered. So I guess you critique the deep-rooted ideal of meritocracy by presenting both its morally sort of inadequate and its societal implications. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. And also, while meritocracy has long been lauded as a democratic tenet, suggested that its very foundation might be at odds with a holistic conception of a just and a cohesive society. So I guess my question are, firstly, if not meritocracy, what guiding principles should democracy aim for ensuring both fairness and a sense of community? And then secondly, given the pervasive global embrace of meritocratic systems, how might societies begin to transition away from it without exacerbating current inequalities and societal divides? And lastly, sorry, bear with me, but would you not think that, over years, even though we have this seemingly better alternatives, that is going to go back into the evolution that we don't want at the first place, or like the sort of sorting machine that you said that we want to, discard it with the revolutions and the years going on?
Right, right. Very good. Great question, Kelly. You mentioned just now at the end, involution, which is a term that has been used by anthropologists and others to describe this hyper-competitive, meritocratic set of attitudes in China that has given rise to its own kind of backlash, the lying flat movement, Tangping, and as a kind of protest against the 996 work culture. So I think that in both the United States, in the populist backlash against elites, and in China, in the lying flat movement, we are seeing a kind of backlash against this intense competitive pressure that seems to be a kind of involution, which really means it doesn't progress. It just kind of feeds on itself with a kind of endless competitive set of pressures. You rightly ask, Kali, what would be an alternative vision? Here are a few elements of it. One would be, and you mentioned inequality, one would be to take inequality seriously and not to assume that the solution to inequality is simply individual upward mobility through higher education. That's an inadequate solution to inequality, even though that's been the primary response politically, certainly in the United States, by center-left and center-right parties alike, Democrats and Republicans for 40, 50 years have said, if you're worried about job loss and wage stagnation, go to university, improve yourself, rather than focusing on the structural sources of the inequalities that lead to the job loss and to the wage stagnation. That would be one thing. Mobility is not an adequate answer to inequality. We have to deal with inequality head on and debate how to create an economy that affirms the dignity of work, which is really a second theme, to focus less on meritocratic competition and more on renewing the dignity of work. Here's one concrete example of how we might be in that debate. Why is it, if we really believe in the dignity of work, as we claim to, that we tax earnings from labor at a higher rate than we tax earnings from interest and dividends and capital gain? That hardly seems consistent with the dignity of work. And there are other ways of questioning it. But the broader ideal that I think we should work toward as an alternative to the kind of credentialism involved and the unfairness in meritocratic inequality, the broader ideal is a broad democratic equality of condition, by which I don't mean that everyone must have the same income or wealth, but equality of opportunity is very important. Everyone should be brought up to the same starting point in the race. That's equality of opportunity. But even if we could succeed in bringing everyone up to the same starting point, and even if we could equip everyone with good running shoes and good nutrition and good coaching so that we have true equality of opportunity, it's predictable who will win the race and therefore the prizes. As Junlong said a moment ago, those who are lucky to be talented. And that too is a matter of luck or indebtedness. So that suggests that we should focus instead on the kind of democratic equality of condition that creates, through public investment, public places and common spaces that bring people together across differences, ethnic differences, racial and religious and class differences, to share a common life with access to basic provision of essential human needs, health, education, enough food to eat, housing, but also class mixing institutions so that we develop a sense of shared responsibility for one another, a sense of solidarity. What meritocratic striving undermines is a sense that we are all in this together, that we have mutual obligations in virtue of our mutual dependence as fellow citizens. So that's the kind of ethic, also a broadly diffused civic education, so that not only students in universities, but everyone can have access to voice, the ability to have a say, and access to the kind of civic education that empowers people to have a meaningful say, whether it's in a university or in a union hall or in a religious community or in a municipal center or a cultural center or a public library, that there be a broadly diffused kind of civic education that equips everyone to have a meaningful say as a citizen. There's a lot more to be said, Callie, in response, but those would be some places where I think we might begin.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, so yeah, wow, it's a really, really beautiful pictures. If we can truly achieve this goal to reach in solidarity, to see each other as a human beings, regardless of your backgrounds, racial backgrounds, economic backgrounds. Yeah, so I would like to get on to Liu Cao, and then please be mindful of the time when you ask the questions, because unfortunately we're running short out of the time. So I do want to get to audience questions. They do have a lot of wonderful questions from the audiences.
Well, thank you. I guess I will try. But no promises guaranteed. Okay, I'm just kidding. So hi, Professor. Thank you very much for the splendid response to last questions. I guess a little bit shifted the gear is that I came up with these questions while I'm reading the book based on one of my very personal experience. I had a conversation with a Black female from St. Louis a year ago, and the topic was about whether being a student physical therapist at Northwestern University, which is like the top tier DPT program across the United States, is a privilege. And her response is initially she thought she was privileged, but after having a conversation with a senior family member of her family, she changed her mind. And I guess what my question is, what's your take from this sort of perspective shift regarding privilege in the educational setting? And my second question is a little bit on top of that, is just kind of based on the recent affirmative action and race conscious admission. And I think also just because you discussed that a little bit in your book. So my question is kind of also about like the ethical dilemma in terms of balancing the pursuit of this sort of diversity, or like balancing the diversity with the principle of like fairness, and how to address the tension in terms of education. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elio. Just a question about the student you spoke to who changed her view about privilege. What prompted her to change it?
She did not talk in depth about it. She just told me that she had a conversation with a senior family member.
I see. Okay.
That was still, I believe that was still, it was a year ago. So it's like kind of like the end of the Black Lives Matter, all these activities. So my perception is that might play a little bit role in that, but I don't want to misguide you, so I didn't bring it up.
Okay. All right. Well, to go to your point about affirmative action, I think that, well, I disagree with the Supreme Court opinion striking down affirmative action. I think that I think it's a mistake to claim, as the court did, that to consider race as a factor in admission is contrary to the Constitution or to the idea of equality or equal treatment of citizens. I think that there are at least two reasons why universities should be able to consider race as a factor in admissions. One of them is the standard argument that the Supreme Court accepted for some 40 years, the diversity argument, the idea that classroom discussions are enriched by having students from a wide range of backgrounds and life experiences, including race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and class. And so I think that's a serious argument and a legitimate reason to uphold the use of race. I don't think it's difficult to distinguish morally between Jim Crow racist segregation and the use of race in a radically different context of trying to ensure diversity of perspective and outlook within university setting. But there's another reason that the court did not accept, even going back 40 years, that I think has been unfortunately lost from view, and that's the idea of reparative justice, of dealing with the fact that we live in a society where African Americans are just a few generations, in some cases one generation, away from the experience of segregation and Jim Crow legislation, to say nothing of the experience of slavery further back. So the idea that institutions, especially ones that are strategic in recruiting leadership for professions, for government, for business, for the next generation, can't make an attempt to repair deep and persisting injustices connected to the legacy of slavery and segregation and racial discrimination. That seems to me a morally compelling consideration. And so for that reason, too, it seems to me that universities should be able to take race into account. Now, the court has ruled, so universities will have to find racially neutral ways of trying to promote diversity and also see to it that they actively recruit members of underrepresented minorities. And also, I think it's important to extend this to class because, as I mentioned at the outset, there is a very substantial class skewing in higher education. In about two-thirds, close to two-thirds of the students in the top 100 or so most selective universities come from the top 25% of the income spectrum, and only 3% come from the bottom 25%. So we've got to do something about that and about first-generation students as well, it seems to me. Elio, thank you for that.
Thank you for the wonderful question, and thank you for the amazing responses. Yeah, so Jiayuan, yeah.
Hi, Professor. Hi, everyone. I choose my university because I think that doesn't follow the elite admission process. It doesn't care about the students' gender, race, family background, country's culture. It just cares about your success during high school. And that's why I choose it. And I think my behavior can represent some people's mindset. When we see the meritocracy, we choose to run away, we choose to escape, we choose to find a place that really belongs to us. And then I jumped to the second level. I chose a gap year during my college life. And I really think it's the best solution of addressing the meritocracy, because I think it reduces my anxiety about this system. And I also found in this book there are some recommendations for this problem, like introducing the lottery of the admission process.
Right.
But personally, I think they are too general, and I don't think an individual can do it. So my question will be the perfect summary for today, which is quite complex and also simple. What should we do next? What should I do next? Yeah.
Well, Xiao Yuan, if you're asking what should we do next in reforming university admissions, let me address that, because you raised the lottery proposal, which is provocative and maybe controversial. But maybe you're also asking a broader question about what should we do next as individuals and as members of a society. But let me speak to the lottery example that you raised. What I've suggested is that for colleges and universities that get far more well-qualified applicants than they can admit, that they identify those who are well-qualified to do the work and do it well, and among them, to admit by lottery. Here's why. I mean, take my university. Harvard gets about 57,000 applicants a year for fewer than 2,000 places. It is able to admit only about 3.5%. But the admissions office tells us time and again, a very large number of those 57,000 are perfectly well qualified to perform well and to flourish at Harvard or at, the other top universities. So I say, all right, then the admissions office should cull out those who are not well qualified to flourish and to do the work well and to contribute to the education of their classmates. And then of those who are well qualified, of the 57,000, maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's 30,000. Among them, do a lottery of the qualified. I have a hunch that the quality of the discussion in my classrooms and of the work would not be noticeably different. Not only that, I don't really think that college admissions officers can predict with any great confidence who among the tens of thousands of 18-year-olds who apply really will turn out to be the most distinguished scientists or politicians or business leaders or the like. Even in sports, we see, well, Tom Brady I'm from Massachusetts. He's probably the greatest football player in the history of American football, quarterback. When he went up for the draft, the football draft, he was chosen 199th. If we can't even predict so circumscribed a skill as throwing a football well and accurately, can we really predict who will wind up being the greatest leaders of our academies, universities, business organizations, and the like? At age 18, I don't think so. But there's a bigger issue, a moral question, which is the lottery would make clear what is already the case, that admission is in large measure, not wholly, in large measure, a matter of luck. This is an important message to convey to those who do not win admission, that it's not a verdict on them and their worthiness. it's also an important reminder for those who are admitted, because it's a way of leading us to question the assumption with which I began, the meritocratic assumption that our success is our own doing. It's a way of challenging the idea that we are self-made and self-sufficient, because it's this self-image that we are self-made and self-sufficient that leads us to forget not only luck and good fortune, but also our indebtedness to those who make our achievements possible. That is why I propose the lottery, at least to get this discussion going. I know, Junlong, that we have to wrap up soon, but before we do, could I, because Xiao Yuan also was asking, where do we go from here? And the other members of this panel have been also pressing me, rightly, on what is the alternative? What is the alternative? And I spoke about the dignity of work, and I spoke about powering down the sorting machines, about reconnecting university life with the intrinsic goods of education. I've spoken about the dignity of work, but also about class mixing institutions. And I want to go back, really, I suppose by way of concluding, to the definition of the American dream. Because from one point of view, someone could listen to our discussion and say that what I'm really calling for is to give up on the American dream. Not really. I'm trying to broaden it so that it's not only about individual upward mobility. The American dream at its inception, when the term was coined, this goes back to the 1930s. It was, the term was coined by a writer named James Truslow Adams, who coined the term the American dream. He made clear that he wasn't only talking about individual upward mobility. He was also describing a broad democratic equality of condition. And as an example, he pointed to public libraries, and in particular to the U.S. Library of Congress, a place of public learning that drew Americans from all walks of life. And here, if I could just read a few sentences of how he described it. Here's what he wrote. As one looks down on the general reading room, one sees the seats filled with silent readers, old and young, rich and poor, black and white, the executive and the laborer, the general and the private, the noted scholar and the schoolboy, all reading at their own library, provided by their own democracy. Adams, the author, considered this scene to be, quote, the perfect working out in a concrete example of the American dream, the means provided by the resources of the people themselves, and a public intelligent enough to use them. And he added, if this example could be carried out in all departments of our national life, the American dream would become an abiding reality. This is what I mean by a broad democratic equality of condition, a greater attention to the creation of public places and common spaces that draw us together in the course of our everyday lives from different backgrounds. Democracy does not require perfect equality, but what it does require is that people from different social backgrounds, from different walks of life, from different class backgrounds, encounter one another, bump up against one another in the course of our everyday lives, because this is how we learn to negotiate and to abide our differences. And this is how we come to care for the common good. So I've not given a detailed a list of measures that I see as the alternative to the harsh ethic of success associated with meritocratic striving and the sorting machine that higher education has become. But at least I hope, prompted and challenged by your very good questions, to give a broad picture of what a more democratic public life might look like. Maybe, just maybe, this shift of focus could begin to point us away from the tyranny of merit toward a more generous, less rancorous, less polarized public life. Thanks so much to the panel, and Junlong, to you for bringing us together.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Professor Sandel, for those amazing remarks. I think that's a great way to end our session today. I hope all of the student panelists and audience, and myself included, so learn a lot in this discussion, and then probably just challenge a little bit of our previous belief. Yeah, just be more humble of our luck, and then be more generous toward others. This is the biggest takeaway. Yeah, so I had, yeah. So, so thank you everyone for participating today. And sorry, we didn't have enough time to get to all of the audience's questions. Professor Sandel's last remark is the perfect way to summarize this entire sessions and also our picked questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed our dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.